Hello, they're Year 12s. Today we're talking themes in Stories We Tell. The theme I'm looking at is art and performance and reality. So throughout Stories We Tell, you've probably realised that there is a connection between the world of theatre and lived experience. And that's not just because for the Polly family, that is their livelihood and that is their bread and butter, but it's actually a question about how much reality mimics the world of theatre and film, and how much film and theatre mimics reality. So there's lots of crossovers there in terms of the way that Polly uses the interplay between film and memories of Diane to emphasise the connection between the two. And sometimes it's hard to discern what is real and what's not real, what's performance, what's an act, and what is reality. So our learning intention is to consider the connection between art and reality and the way this idea is presented over the course of Polly's memoir documentary. Your success criteria, you'll be able to make the correlation between Diane's story and the references to theatre and film. I've included a quote from Shakespeare just to show you that this is a question that has fascinated lots of different actors, writers, etc. over the ages, throughout the ages. So all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. So already you'll be making links there between the question that we've already looked at, which is that a life has many parts. So I really want you to think about whether life is in fact a kind of performance as well. So for the purpose of this mini lesson, what I'm going to do is take you through a few key scenes to show you how Michael narrates his story by referencing particular films as he talks about key events in Diane's life and in Sarah's life. So we're going to work our way through each of these aspects to Michael's narrative, and you will see that they do match up with key moments in Diane's life and Sarah's life as well. So there's some other stuff going on as well in terms of what Sarah's doing, so I'll explain as we go. So the first scene we're looking at is at the 1 minute mark, and you can go and have a closer look at this down the track. So this is just a starting point for you thinking about the link between fiction and reality.
Shattered glass and splintered.
Okay, see Michael there, performer. Okay, so this idea of storytellers, of these people who are being interviewed or who are storytellers, also being actors and performers. So we've got, again, that confusion around what's real, what's not real, what's performance, and what's authentic and genuine. Maybe we can't ever differentiate. Our next one is Diane as an actress. So if you've probably looked at this a number of times for a number of different reasons, this little black and white footage.
Tell the whole story. The marriage to
Diane.
Me? Do you want me?
Okay, so there we're positioned to see Diane perhaps as a performer, as an actress. So that is a question, or it's a representation of her that compels us to question whether we can actually know her, or was she somebody that masked her internal thoughts and only presented a performer to the world. The next one's at the 8:55 minute mark, so moving right along. And here we've got the caretaker's daughter. So we've got that reference to Michael talking about his performance in The Caretaker's Daughter and how it's his role as an actor that Diane falls in love with.
Actually, the lead actor, and that he was introduced to her. Her name was Diane, and she loved the show so much that she came back twice more during the run. I think Diane fell in love with, not with me, but with the character I was playing on stage. The character is something that is so different from me It's such an exciting and dominating character. You can't take your eyes off that character. That's absolutely nothing like me at all, but you can see why I would want to play it.
Okay, so we've got more allusions to acting and performance. At the 10-minute mark, we have another reference to a stage production, and this time the reference is to The Condemned of Altona, and Mick and Diane act together in this play.
Oh, in the story, they're both lying to go home with each other.
And that changed their lives irrevocably. Diane was playing the part of the actress, and me as the German officer. Once again, this is a fascinating character. So even in that play, we were playing two roles rather than Michael and Diane.
Okay, so again, we've got this whole question mark around authenticity and really discovering the truth about a person, this whole idea that maybe life is a kind of performance. That's the inference, I think, of the reference to The Condemned of Altona. So moving along now to 1639, we've got the regret that Mick expresses at acknowledging that his wife probably fell in love with a character rather than him.
He never lived up to her earlier vision of Mick and Franz, and he knew he never could.
Dad, can you just take that line back?
Okay, then at the 18-minute mark, we have the play Toronto, and it's interesting that this is the play that Diane goes to perform in and act in Montreal, but the play is actually about the author's experiences in the theatre world.
Running at the door for recess going, yay! And that's what part of going to Montreal.
In your life. What it was about?
It was a play called Toronto, and it was about a bunch of people auditioning. I can't remember what she did in this play. It was about as unmemorable as they get. The guy had written a lot of great plays, and I guess he needed some money.
He was writing about his experiences in the theatre world. I played the director of his.
Okay, so again, we've got this focus on theatre and the role of art. 22:31, we've got Mick and Diane together on stage once more. And we can see that there's this this device that Polly uses of honing in on the play.
The play Filomena by Eduardo de Filippo. Diane was to play the title role with Michael as the husband. Someone had seen them together in The Condemned of Altona and had decided it would be nice to see them together on stage once more. It was a fine gesture, and they were delighted to do the piece. Filomena was the play that became the movie Marriage Italian Style with Marcello Mastroianni.
Okay, keep watching that because there's some really interesting parallels between what happens later in regards to children being all equal, and what this film and the play is on about. Okay, so check that over. Moving on to 26. And we have the memorial service, and it's described as a performance, and there's different opinions about that, whether that means that it was real, whether, you really can almost enjoy the fact that you've got all these fantastic speakers who can speak so eloquently, or whether you think that it's a bit of a charade.
How the house is going to look,
As it progressed, she was more and more tired, and the treatments were harder and easy,
Note here also we have the music by Abraham Lass, and it's a funeral music.
Service at all?
It just seemed like a really big memorial service. And I just remember a lot of the people that spoke were sort of Canadian sort of celebrity people, not necessarily the people that were closest to Mom in her life. But I remember thinking as I was watching it, gee, it's a good memorial service, and I think it's kind of nice to be in show business when you die, because the people that speak are like good at speaking.
She was very, very popular, so as you can imagine, there were many, many people there, but to me it was some kind of production. I felt like I was at...
Okay, so different attitudes to the funeral service or the memorial service. Okay, moving along to 39:29, and I just wanted to bring your attention to the music by Abraham Lass. You just heard it there with the funeral scene, but he was a pianist who composed music that was used for silent films, and the music choices were particular to what was being filmed, so they really helped establish mood. So think about the way that Polly uses the music of Abraham Lass to complement the visual elements of the film.
And now she's sitting with her mother's lover.
So we got that height of drama there. So again, this is reality, but it's almost like a kind of fiction. It's playing out as this story that has this plot twist that's unanticipated. So we get that with the music, and so we're compelled to once again consider the paralleling of fiction and reality. Okay, moving on to 57:28. And here it's not a fictional creation that is referenced, but a documentary on Harry that Polly references to ironically show how she can investigate her father's history.
Very comfortable with you and thinking, why not ask him what he knows? And then, well, situation like this, to have an educational DVD on your previously unknown biological father. Hilarious.
Making his way from communism to commerce.
Okay, then then we've got Lies My Father Told Me. So that's a
culture.
Film that
Harry's
Harry
many
produces.
lives sometimes feel like the crossword patches of a Harlequin costume. When I first met Harry, he was a film producer, and Lies My Father Told Me had won Hollywood's Golden Globe for Best Foreign Film. The script by Ted Allen was nominated for an Oscar.
Okay, so just consider the title there. It's, of course, quite interesting in relation to this focus on secrets and also lies that perhaps parents tell their children. Okay, so now we're up to 57:20. No, we're not. 105. Okay, 105. And Sarah is on the set of Mr. Nobody when she receives a call from a journalist wanting to expose the story about her biological father.
Worked the other way. He worked to solidify.
And then we'd all be better off. It's like, this is a wonderful life. Oh no, it's the reverse.
It's the middle of September, and Sarah went to Montreal for the shoot of Mr. Nobody. Little time in all that to consider whether she should tell me of the DNA test. Sarah is on set, shooting a scene as a young Neanderthal woman.
I often have this dream. Some prehistoric time. I can hear you screaming. I chase the bear.
So note that once again, when Michael's narrating the story, he matches up the story with a theatrical equivalent of real life. So here he refers to tragedy and comedy and how you can't keep old comedy at bay. So I think that's an interesting reference. Okay, I've talked a little bit about the music. Have a listen to those soundtracks. There's also a couple of other references in terms of Michael makes the metaphorical reference to Diane and Michael concluding their final act together, just as Diane dies. So you can find that to suggest that the language that he uses is the language of theatre in describing their life together as well. So I think that's a good thing to look at. So when Sarah comes to visit Michael to tell him about her biological father, he sets the scene by talking about Greta Garbo and Anna Christie.
In my fly, which is rare. Flies are... I told you already, I'm not a particularly... like me. Maybe my swatter before... meal, which was the story of Anna Christie, and which led to my demonstration of the acting of drunkenness throughout the 20th century. The night before, I'd seen Garbo in her first talkie along with Marie Dressler, and I found her acting fascinating. You know, I can go on about these thespian matters for some hours.
So Michael's so caught up in communicating to Sarah this stuff about acting that he doesn't even realise she's got something pretty important to tell him. Okay, now at the 1 hour and 10 mark, we have this reference to the revelation that all of the jokes that they'd been talking about over the last however many years are actually true. So we've got that whole sense of theatre and making stuff up and, you know, being quite humorous and comedic about Sarah's identity, and then, you know, truth actually being stranger than fiction.
Our relationship, I mean, it's still exactly the same as it was before, but and then I remember you came round the table and put your arm... Go on about these thespian... In terms of our relationship, I mean, it's still exactly the same. The truth. When I suddenly realised, oh my God, what she's saying is that I'm not actually her biological father. I sat there in abject silence, as Sarah must have done when she found that Harry was a father. Thoughts ran in and out of my mind. It's impossible. It couldn't be. I'm dreaming. I was quite stunned. My God, all this stuff we've been joking about for years, it's actually true.
Okay, and then a little bit further on we've got, there was no acting in any of that, keep going down. So this is in reference to Michael helping Sarah with a film that she did when she was going to theatre school or drama school.
It took me a while to recover and before, but and then I remember you came round the table and put your arm round my shoulder and said, "No, I'm so glad it doesn't make any difference, does it?" And I was
sorry, it's further
it's
on.
funny, you know.
Was there other people in all their little hearts at ease for another week's disease?
It's a dire line of questioning, isn't it? We must find a way of making it more funny. What are you, some kind of sadistic interviewer?
You told me I had to break you down more.
Yeah, well, you've done it, haven't you? There was no acting in any of that. No acting at all. You see what a vicious director you are. Now you understand, don't you? I remember that day when you directed me in a ridiculous montage piece that you were doing when you were at the film centre, and you made me walk down into a pool of freezing cold water wearing full clothes. Keep going further down, Dad. I can't go any further down. My clothes are holding me up. Just keep going down. God, it's so annoying. Oh, it's a very little thing to ask of you. All I want you to do is go a foot under the water. So make that connection with going down to finally stripping away perhaps all of the artifice of performance and getting to the truth. So that's an interesting little connection there. Okay, so what you need to do, firstly, there's some links here to that music by Abraham Lass. So you can see, you can have a look at the soundtracks to the film, and then you can also go to Abraham Lass and have a listen to some of the songs, and then make that connection with the title of the track to its appearance in the film. So if you want to go that far. All right, so back to what it is that you've got to do. So if you can consider how the silent film music by Abraham Lass contributes to Polly's interest in exploring the connection between lived experience and drama, think about the soundtracks that accompany different scenes and how they help establish mood. Michael Polly shapes his narrative of Diane around stories of the theatre and a film. Every episode he documents has its corresponding film or stage equivalent. Review each of these moments and list the name of the film or stage production, and an overview of the plot, and list what Michael tells us about Diane at each of these points in time. And finally, how do each of the plays or films Michael references throughout his narrative illuminate the reality of the Polly family's experiences? You'll need, okay, I'll just leave it there. All right, so that should give you enough work to go on with by the time you answer those 3 questions on the theme of art and performance and reality. Have fun.